The timings for AQA GCSE Language Paper 2 are quite tricky. I'm going to give you some solutions, but remember, my solutions are aimed at students who want to get top grades. If you're currently looking at grades 5 and 6, my advice might still be relevant, so check it out, see if it convinces you that getting the higher grades is easy. That's what this graph is going to be about later. Okay, you have 105 minutes for this exam, and the exam board say, well, we want you to spend 45 minutes on each section, so A and B, and then we want you to spend 15 minutes reading the texts. Now that's not good advice. There are 2 texts, page of A4 each, and if I read them out loud, it takes me 8 minutes. So that's a good litmus test for me, a guide to say, if I can read them in 8 minutes out loud, a typical 16-year-old ought to be able to read them in 8 minutes silently with nothing else going on, because obviously you're much quicker when you're not having to pronounce the words. So 8 to 10 minutes to read the text. However, just try this at home. If you go away and read 2 texts for 10 minutes and then come back and try and remember what you read, you ain't going to remember much. So doing the reading first doesn't help you. Doing the reading first gets in the way because, yeah, you've done the reading, but you won't remember it, so you'll have to read it again. So, what's my solution? Well, there are 80 marks and 40 of those, so half the marks are available for question 5. Well, so guess what? I want to make sure I nail as many marks as possible. When I've got all the energy necessary at the beginning of the exam, I am going to do question 5 first. You don't have to. If your mocks worked brilliantly, whatever you did in your mocks, you keep doing. But if you didn't get the marks that you wanted in your mocks, then my advice should be useful to you. So my top tip there, do question 5 first, because then you've got 40 marks, 50% of the marks in the exam in the bag. How long should you spend on question 5? Well, you are going to need to steal some minutes from question 5 in order to do the reading. So I'm going to suggest that you only spend 40 minutes on question 5, a maximum of 3 to 5 minutes planning. I've shown you how to plan in the separate video. I'll link it at the end of this one. So 3 to 5 minutes planning max. Why? The examiners don't mark your planning. Like, it doesn't count towards your grade in any way. It's just there to give you ideas that are going to score highly. If you wrote no plan at all, you could still write a brilliant answer because one idea leads to another idea, leads to another idea. Yeah, so you can write without planning, but I do recommend spending at least 3 minutes, but no more than 5. That leaves you between 35 minutes and 37 minutes to write your kick-ass answer. Okay, now I have 65 minutes left. How am I going to apportion them? Well, question 4 is a big marker. It's 16 marks, but remember on paper 1 that was 20 marks. So doing question 4 next is not necessarily the best way to do the question. I personally would do question 4 next, but I'd be equally happy doing question 3. That's 12 marks, so these are the 2 big markers. Now the reason I've got some nervousness about doing question 4 next is the reading. So with question 3, you only have to read a few lines from one source. Now the advantage of that is it's easy to do. You can just read a little bit, answer the full question and get 12 marks. So it's very tempting, I think, to do question 3 next because it's easy marks as long as you write quickly. Remember, you've got to write 12 explanations in order to get the 12 marks, but they're only on a few lines from the source, so you don't waste loads of time reading. This means you've got 18 minutes to do that question. It would only take you 2 of those minutes really to do the reading because it's only a short bit, and you can then spend 16 minutes earning your 12 marks for 12 explanations. So that is a really good technique if you're not a quick reader. If you are a quick reader, then it pays to do question 4 first, because that's worth more marks, you get more money in the bank. So, how long should you spend on the 16-mark question? Well, I've already told you, I think you need 8 minutes for the reading, 10 if you're a particularly slow reader. Test it out, go and practice on old paper, read and see how long it takes you. That leaves you 22 minutes to write how many comparison explanations? 16. You need 16 explanations in 22 minutes. That's less than 1 a minute, so it's doable, and obviously you only need that if you're going to go for 100%, and most of you won't be going for 100%, so you can write fewer than 16 and still get a grade 7, no bother. But you're going to spend 22 minutes doing that, writing as many explanations as possible. You will remember that the best way to do this is just to write in contrast halfway through the answer. So if you're spending 22 minutes, you say, right, I'm going to write about source A, 11 minutes, then I'm going to stop, finish the sentence, and then I'm going to write these golden words in contrast, right? And then you're going to write about source B. And therefore, everything you've written about source B will compare back to source A. So you're making a comparison, but you only have to do it once. I think that's just a wonderful technique. It's easy, it's quick, and you can't go wrong because source A and source B will always be different, like they'll have different points of view in them, and therefore you can't write something that isn't a comparison. It's just so good. Right, so that's why I'm spending 30 minutes on question 4, and why personally I would do question 4 first, because I'm a quick reader. If you're not a quick reader, question 3 first. The other advantage for you then is that you read part of source A, and therefore you don't need the full 8 minutes to read the rest, hopefully. Okay, question 2 is only worth 8 marks, and you're going to give it 12 minutes. Again, you know the routine by now. You're going to write 8 explanations, and those are going to give you 8 marks. That's just the way it goes. Question 4 is only on a small section of the source, and you will be totally familiar with that source by the time you get to question 4. So you will only need a maximum of 3 minutes to answer that. Now, some of you will say, oh no, I want to do question 1 first, get my feeling of confidence in the exam. Hey, you can do that because you only have to read a small section of the source. It wouldn't waste much time. However, it will take you longer if you do question 1 first because you won't be as familiar with the text than if you do it later. The other thing that I quite like about this, leaving it till last, is let's say you mess up your exam timings. You know that those 4 marks are going to be easy to get. In fact, the average mark nationally is 3.5, which means even students who can't read are probably getting 3 marks out of 4. You know, so it's easy. Now, the reason I like that, I can keep that to the end, is let's say I'm struggling in question 2, and I know if I've only got 4 minutes left, I might only get 1 extra mark or maybe 2 extra marks out of these 8. It's going to take me a while to find the marks, but I can just say, do you know what, I can stop because I can get 4 easy marks straight away. Boom, by doing question 1. So that is my suggested order of questions and timings. Now, why is this important? This is called a bell curve. So if we just measured everybody in your school for height, they would arrange themselves here, the shortest, then the majority of the people would be, you know, in a similar height range, and then the tallest would be down here. There wouldn't be so many of them. And it's exactly the same with your exam scores. This is how the exam boards work out your grade. They just take everyone's mark and they just rank them all. And that gives you a bell curve. So that's 0%, 100%. You get a certain proportion getting a low percentage. This might be up to, it's probably about 30%. And this is maybe going to be 75%. Okay? And everyone at 75% is going to get fantastic grades, and everyone at 30% below is going to get lower grades. Well, what does that mean? So you've been in the exam hall, you've seen what your peers are doing, and I guarantee that you will look around with 20 minutes to go in the exam, or even half an hour to go in the exam, and you'll see people doing this. Oh, I'm thinking, I wonder what to write next. Or you'll see people doing this. Oh man, this is hard, my hand hurts, I can't be bothered with this. Or you'll see people doing this. Oh man, I'm just going to go to sleep here for a couple of minutes. Yeah, what you will see is students giving up. That means there are going to be a lot of students down here. It also means that if you keep writing, even if you're not brilliant at English, if you keep writing while other people are slowing down, you're going to shift up the bell curve. And so my top bit of advice to you with these timings is these timings force you to keep going to the very end. And if you do, I 100% guarantee you will get higher marks than most of your peers, because most of your peers will be knackered by now and they will be given up. They'll just be getting tired, thinking that they've done their best, when they're lying to themselves. Just watch them in the exam, put their pens down and chill out and refuse to get the marks. Don't be like that. Don't refuse to get the marks. Let me know in the comments if the timings work for you, because I might learn something new. If you want to see how to plan, question 5, that's the video coming up next.